I think that in one situation where I felt things were not going well in our organization, and it happened with a relatively new leader that we brought in and we're very optimistic about, this individual chose to send memos rather than to meet individually, and we were a small organization, so individual meeting or even small group meetings would not have been a difficulty at all. But the memos communicated his thoughts, but they were communicated in black and white, and we didn't hear the tone, we didn't see the demeanor, we didn't hear the way in which it was given. And so a lot of negative thoughts were generated from the memos. Negative attributions were made. Does he not really care about a relationship with us because he communicates only in memos? So I would say that memos are really best in the follow-up to conversations, not to give directions or list out projects or visions or things of that sort. And then I think the other thing that I would suggest here that might help in limiting miscommunication is what does this mean to you? And to get people to respond as to how our conversation or the conclusions of this meeting is going to affect you. Tell me how it's going to affect you. Tell me how you feel about it. Tell me if this creates anxiety or you feel satisfied or you feel challenged. What's happening in your mind? What's happening inside you? And so if there are some negative feelings or some maybe just ambiguities, to have those come forth and to elicit them from people is to say, in essence, I want to hear your voice and I will respect your voice. And I think then we can limit the negativity that may eventually surface later in forms of conflict or passive-aggressive behavior or things of that sort. I had a workshop where miscommunication was happening at such a deep level, and yet nobody, or at least the two groups, were completely unaware. It was a miscommunication between, on the one side, a group of missionaries, probably about 20-25 missionaries there, this was in Western Canada, and on the other side, about 20 or 25, what they call their, sometimes they call them Native Americans, most often they call them First Nations people in Canada, Aboriginal peoples. And the idea of the conference was for partnership. So when I came to lead the conference and to create partnerships and the atmosphere and make this happen, the first question I asked was, what comes to your mind when you hear the word partnership? And a number of the missionaries spoke up, reciprocity, mutuality, sharing, brotherhood, mutual kindness, cooperation, all very positive kinds of things. However, the First Nations people did not speak. And so I said, would you like to speak, someone from, or several of you from the First Nations group? And there was silence for probably a minute or a minute and a half. It seemed like forever. And finally, one person, found out later it was the chief, spoke, and he said, and I'll mimic his voice a little bit, when we First Nations people hear the word partnership, what comes to our mind is it's another way for the white man to control us. Now, there is the miscommunication. Two completely different images of partnership. And of course, the rest of the conference was quite interesting given those two realities.